It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. A gang is convicted of murdering two teenaged best friends in a case of mistaken identity.
These animals took away a son, a brother, a nephew, an uncle and a grandchild.
The Chancellor says she's not satisfied as new data reveals that the economy has barely grown since Labour took office. Shares in vaccine makers fall after Donald Trump picks skeptic Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be his health secretary. Leading experts warn that the UN's process of climate negotiations is no longer fit for purpose. And boxing legend Mike Tyson prepares for his return to the ring to fight YouTuber Jake Paul. Plus, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Good evening. They were two boys aged 15 and 16, friends since nursery school, simply heading out for pizza. But Mason Rist and Max Dixon were stabbed to death in a Bristol street by a gang in January in a case of mistaken identity. The gang had decided wrongly that the boys had been involved in an earlier attack on a house and killed them for it. Today, 45-year-old Anthony Snook, 18-year-old Riley Tolliver, and three teenagers aged 15, 16 and 17 were found guilty of murder. Our West of England correspondent Dan Whitehead reports now on the police operation that brought them to justice.
Those boys were not known to their attackers. They were best friends, two beautiful children, just gone about their lives and attacked for no reason whatsoever.
It was a double murder in a case of mistaken identity, one that began an hour before their deaths. Captured on CCTV, three males armed with machetes smash windows at a house in the Hartcliffe area of Bristol. It was this attack on January the 27th that triggered a deadly hunt. The five defendants travelled in Snook's Audi Q2 towards Knowle, a part of Bristol that's long had postcode rivalries with Hartcliffe.
The prosecution heard how the group were out for revenge, acting as a pack as they hunted down those responsible. They were tooled up with fearsome weapons, they said, as they headed up this road towards Mason's house.
At the same time, around 11:15 p.m, Max arrived to meet up with his friend Mason. As they leave his house, the Audi stops nearby. Four of the defendants jump out, weapons captured on a CCTV camera. Mason and Max had been wrongly identified for the attack an hour earlier. A chase unfolded, leaving the boys lying in the street with what the court heard were unsurvivable stab wounds. It was a fatal attack that lasted just 33 seconds.
You're under arrest for 2 counts of murder now. Circumstances being the same, your vehicle was seen leaving the scene of a stabbing.
That night, Snook was arrested multiple times as officers learnt that both boys had died. Following today's verdict, reaction from Mason and Max's family.
These animals took away a son, a brother, a nephew, an uncle and a grandchild. And we must now navigate the rest of our lives without our puzzle piece.
Today's outcome doesn't change the fact that 2 families go home without their boys. But we can now hopefully begin to process that and remember them both and the happy memories that both families have of Max and Mason.
In the days that followed the attack, the community rallied with tributes to 2 young lives lost. Max and Mason were at school together, preparing for their GCSEs. They would have attended this year's prom. Their fellow Year 11s made sure the boys were remembered.
We had a wall that was lit up in red for Mason and Liverpool Football Club, and a wall in blue for Max for Park Knoll Football Club. So a difficult time. And I think that the year group came together and supported each other through it.
The investigation involved more than 230 police officers and staff. The murders came before the new law was introduced banning ownership of zombie-style knives and machetes.
The weapons used in the attack on Mason and Max were simply horrific. In all my service, I've not seen a weapon like the one we saw used against those two boys.
The three teenagers, aged 15, 16 and 17, and 18-year-old Riley Tolliver and 45-year-old Anthony Snook will be sentenced at a later date. Police are still searching for the three men behind the house attack, one that ultimately led to the deaths of two innocent boys and two mothers who've lost their sons. Dan Whitehead, Sky News in Bristol.
To the economy now, and Labour put growth at the heart of its pitch to voters ahead of the election, which swept the party into power. But today the Chancellor conceded that she was not satisfied after official figures confirmed that the economy has barely grown since July. The Office for National Statistics says the economy grew by just 0.1% between July and September, less than experts had predicted. The data confirms that growth in the economy has continued to slow down since the UK came out of recession at the start of the year. And in September, the economy actually shrank by 0.1%. Economists say uncertainty about the Chancellor's budget was to blame. Our business and economics correspondent, Gurpreet Narwan, reports.
In her protective gear, ready for a bruising day. Labour is in power, but the economy is now shrinking. The Chancellor says she's not satisfied, but insists her plan is working.
I announced some of the biggest reforms of our pension system in a generation to unlock long-term patient capital, up to £80 billion, to help invest in small businesses and scale-up businesses and in the infrastructure needs. We're 4 months into this government. There's a lot more to do to turn around the growth performance of the last decade or so.
Her message is, be patient. Labour wants to ramp up investment and reform the economy, whether that's pensions or planning. She's even hinting at closer ties to Europe. But the Tories say she's on the wrong path.
What the government has done is ramped up taxes on business, national insurance. That's going to depress wages, increase unemployment. It's going to lower growth. You're going to see higher inflation as a consequence and higher interest rates. And these are things that are not good as an outlook for the future.
In her budget, the Chancellor hiked up national insurance, hitting businesses like this hair salon in Marlow. The government say growth is around the corner, but in the meantime, employers are being asked to do the heavy lifting.
So for our 5 businesses or 65 people, the total is 122,000. Deciding whether we continue with direct employment, which is what we really want to do the right thing, directly employ people, or whether we have to look at changing model. And we see that as an assault on workers' rights, because if the whole industry has to change business model, and go into self-employment, then workers' rights are effectively over.
The Chancellor remains resolute.
We're talking to businesses all the time. They say to us they have 3 options available to them. They can reduce their headcount, they can raise prices, or they can take a smaller profit. Which one do you suggest they do?
It's up to businesses to make decisions about how they run their businesses. I know that many businesses are focused all the time on improving productivity and efficiency, and I've no doubt that the ingenuity of business will ensure that we can get through this.
They might get through it, but if it leads to higher prices and lower wages, living standards might pay the price. Gurpreet Narwan, Sky News.
And we can go live to Downing Street and our People and Politics correspondent, Nick Martin. Nick, the Chancellor putting on a brave face on the number that she didn't want to see.
That's right, but the Chancellor is right in many ways that economic growth, is the cornerstone of getting the country out of the problems. It's either that or put taxes up to try and recoup that money. Because the Chancellor in the building behind me knows that economic growth puts more revenue, tax revenues into the coffers, it creates jobs and it benefits trade. And all these things bring in money, which is what the government says it desperately needs, having taken power and inherited, it would say, pretty dismal deficit and an economy. But cast your mind back just a few weeks and that budget, it was very painful for a lot of people, and we've heard that expressed there in that report. National insurance contributions for employers, freezing of tax thresholds, which effectively means people will pay more tax, and things like that, and picking fights with farmers and charging them inheritance tax. These are all painful things, and what the Chancellor needs now is to start seeing improvements in the numbers, and these numbers are pretty limp. In fact, they're really disastrous for the Chancellor as she tries to sell this plan, because what Rachel Reeves needs in the next quarter's figures and the next ones after that is to see a bit of gain after all of this pain.
Nick Martin in Downing Street for us. Nick, thank you. Shares in vaccine makers have fallen on news that Donald Trump has picked vaccine skeptic Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be his health secretary. His appointment is just one of a series of controversial selections made by the president-elect since his victory. But it remains to be seen if the U.S. Senate will approve his nominations, as our U.S. correspondent James Matthews now reports.
Capitol Hill, Washington, D.C. This building is the cradle of democracy in American politics.
You'll see a painting of George Washington.
It has the Declaration of Independence.
History is staring each other down.
They've seen some changes here. They haven't seen change quite like this. Mar-a-Lago, Florida is where political power now goes to party. Republicans scrubbed up as details filtered down. Of names selected to run a government, Matt Gaetz and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., to name but two. RFK is the anti-vaxxer and conspiracy theorist chosen in charge of health.
Don't get too popular, Bobby. Oh. You know, you've reached about the level. Now, we want you to come up with things and ideas and what you've been talking about for a long time, and I think you're going to do some unbelievable things.
RFK is the nephew of JFK and son of Bobby Kennedy. He ran as an independent in this election, but dropped out and endorsed Donald Trump. He's made headlines in the past for dumping a dead bear in New York Central Park, a story he told on social media.
I said, let's go put the bear in Central Park and we'll make it look like he got hit by a bike. It'll be funny for people.
It is an absolute honor to welcome Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to the stage.
In the past, Kennedy has called vaccines unproven and dangerous. Share prices in vaccine manufacturers dropped at the news of his selection. If Trump's picks are confirmed by the Senate, there's concern in the markets and in the medical world.
He doesn't have the temperament. You know, he said a lot of things over the years that really just are not kinds of things you want in a health leader. And the misinformation and disinformation he's espoused over the years, it means that we really can't trust him.
1, 2, 3. On Capitol Hill, members-elect of the new Congress posed for the family photo. But do Republicans have an image problem?
I don't know Mr. Kennedy. But certainly, I'm very open to him coming in, and I think he's got some good ideas. I think some things that he has been concerned about need to be looked into.
Do you support Gaetz and RFK Jr.?
It's not my decision to do that. I'm not in the Senate. That's a decision the president's made to name people to his cabinet. That's his choice. That's his prerogative. It's the same case for every president since George Washington.
It comes down to power, forged through centuries and implemented by places like this, the institutions of government. Tradition has dictated the course of power through time, but right now, it's a different time. One that will test this country and what it's built.
And James joins us live now from Washington. So, James, how likely do you think is Trump to get his cabinet approved by the Senate?
I think it's a toss-up, frankly, Barbara. I mean, Republicans enjoy a majority in the Senate. What will happen is at the turn of the year, these individuals, they go before the Senate and argue their case. The Senate nods them through or blocks them. So with a Republican majority, in terms of the numbers, it should be that they are nodded into position. But there is concern and a reluctance amongst Republicans at some of these names, particularly Matt Gaetz, who has long made enemies amongst his own Republican colleagues. And right now, there are something like around 30 saying that they are not guaranteeing to back him. So that's where they stand at the moment. I suppose in time it will be a test of their loyalty to Donald Trump and their resilience in terms of voting against his wishes and being able to deal with the blowback that they might get. That all raises the spectre of something called the recess appointment. Now, on the one hand, you have Senate confirmation. That's the normal route to get these people into position. A recess appointment is a fallback whereby you go around the lawmakers. They don't have a say, and the president can appoint the individual in post. Donald Trump on social media has called for this to happen. It's not unprecedented, it's happened in the past. Donald Trump says it should happen this time. And of course, if it did, and if the Senate majority leader said that could happen, that would allow Donald Trump to put these people into position without the say of US lawmakers. And that would be a demonstration very much of the power he enjoys and would considerably enhance his ability to implement the Donald Trump MAGA agenda, of course.
James Matthews with the latest from Washington. James, thank you. A group of leading climate experts and policymakers have warned that the United Nations process of climate negotiations is no longer fit for purpose. The group, which includes former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, says countries which fail to support the phasing out of fossil fuels should no longer host COP climate summits. Well, this year's COP conference is being hosted by Azerbaijan, whose president said this week that oil and gas were a gift from God. Sky's Victoria Seabrook reports now from the Azerbaijani capital, Baku.
A UN climate summit should be a masterclass in diplomacy, but some world leaders are better at it than others. The president of host country Azerbaijan used his opening speech on Tuesday to wax lyrical about its oil and gas.
Many other important criteria which should be a basis for kind of evaluation of the country's performance, but not the country's natural resources, which are the gift of the God.
A bad look for a country that has put itself forward to be a climate leader. And today, the image of the annual COP summits tarnished further. A group of COP veterans made a bombshell intervention, warning the process is moving too slowly while the planet is on life support. In an open letter, they said, "It is now clear that the COP is no longer fit for purpose. This is what compels our call for a fundamental overhaul of the COP. We need a shift from negotiation to implementation."
The conference here in Baku still has a week to run, and for the thousands of delegates today, it was business as usual. But there are now serious questions being raised by some climate heavyweights about whether COP as it is can deliver meaningful change.
But the authors of the letter later panicked, worrying their words could be hijacked by those who want to cancel COP altogether. So they removed the language about it not being fit for purpose.
We started to hear that there was some use of the language as if we were trying to call for the elimination of COPs. And of course, that's not at all the case.
And for vulnerable island nations losing their coastlines to rising sea levels, this forum is something they also cannot live without.
While others may have their criticisms of the COP process, it's extremely important for us because that is the only time that our voice can be clearly heard.
The response from both the UN climate body and Azerbaijan's team has been no comment. They, and many here, insistent the COP process offers hope in the dark. Victoria Seabrook, Sky News.
Russia's President Putin has held his first publicly announced conversation with a sitting Western leader in nearly 2 years. The Kremlin says that during a call with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Mr. Putin stressed that any agreement to end the war in Ukraine must take Russian security interests into account and reflect what he called new territorial realities. Well, Germany says Mr. Scholz condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine and called on Mr. Putin to withdraw withdraw his troops. Ukraine's President Zelensky, meanwhile, has condemned the call, accusing Germany of opening Pandora's box. 3 Met police officers have been found guilty of gross misconduct for accessing files relating to the disappearance and murder of Sarah Everard. She was raped and murdered by former police officer Wayne Couzens in March 2021. A tribunal found that the officers had accessed her files with no proper policing purpose. Davina McCall has undergone surgery after doctors discovered a benign tumor in her brain. The 57-year-old TV presenter says that they found a colloid cyst, which she described as very rare.
A few months ago, I did a menopause talk for a company, and they offered me a health scan in return, which I thought I was going to ace. But it turned out I had a benign brain tumour called a colloid cyst, which is very rare. 3 in a million. Say a prayer for me. I am in good spirits. I'm okay. It's been up and down, obviously. We've been through a lot.
Now, they're the people who believe that the law does not apply to them. Calling themselves sovereign citizens, a growing number of people across the country are claiming they're not bound by the law unless they've consented to it, especially when it comes to tax. Our data and forensics correspondent Tom Cheshire has been looking into the movement, which has grown in the UK since the pandemic.
You guys have been practicing fraud. You have been practicing all manner of things.
Anti-government extremists trying to force their way into an Essex court last year. They were recently jailed for attempted kidnapping.
Do not interfere with my sheriffs.
But behind their actions is a bizarre belief system that is gaining popularity. One that insists no one can be subject to laws they have not personally consented to, based on readings of ancient documents like Magna Carta.
No, you cannot touch your stuff.
They're called sovereign citizens, or freemen on the land, and they have their origins in the US. They're a known problem for law enforcement there.
You're not even allowed to touch me, bro. That's not how it works. You're a commercial entity.
Not just traffic stops like this. In other cases, they have been involved in the fatal shooting of police officers. And the ideology gained followers in the UK during COVID, where anti-lockdown protesters would sometimes use sovereign arguments to bolster their case. The cost of living crisis only added to the appeal, as people looked online to find ways of avoiding paying bills. The movement now has hundreds of thousands of followers in the UK across Facebook, YouTube, X and Telegram. One group, called the Sovereign Project, which claims to have signed up more than 20,000 members over the last 4 years, has agreed to sit down with me in a Leicestershire hotel where they hold their annual conference. It is in no way connected to the Essex kidnappers, and it rejects any political action, let alone violence. But it does share an underlying ideology, especially when it comes to obligations to pay tax, as its leader, Pete Stone, better known as Sovereign Pete, explains.
Do you know about the feudal system, when people were literal slaves and they were forced to pay tax? Now, unless the feudal system still operates today, and we are still serfs and slaves, then the only way that you can pay tax is through contract. You have to agree to it and consent to it, informed consent.
We're not here to dodge tax. We just question where's the obligation to pay.
Is there a danger in terms of the ideology and the language when you're saying councils are committing crimes and fraud that people take that and actually act on it?
Well, that's proved.
Yeah.
We only deal with facts.
Sky News analysis showed that out of 374 council websites covering Great Britain, nearly half, 172, have addressed the movement on their pages. They're all similar with a clear warning. West Suffolk Council says, very occasionally we get people, such as Freemen on the Land and similar groups, who wrongly believe that using an archaic law means they don't have to pay council tax. Sheffield Council warns, you do not have a choice as to whether you are liable for council tax, and being a freeman does not exempt anyone from paying council tax. Or, as Kufeli puts it, council tax is not optional and not something you consent to. But the Sovereign Project's worldview extends beyond council tax. It is deeply anti-establishment, at times conspiratorial, with talk of shadowy figures controlling national governments.
The decisions were already made at the top, so it doesn't matter.
Where's the top, sorry?
The top. Now, these are the people who control governments. Government's quite low down. Now, a lot of people say this could be the Crown Council of the 13. This could be a series of Italian families.
It's frightening in a way once you start to appeal it. And I believe, and I firmly believe, it is the true British Englishman, I'm going to say this, and woman, of this country has the power to unlock this madness that's happening in the West. We've got the Magna Carta, we've got all these things, all these checks and balances. We just need to wake up. Go down to Parliament and say, time to dismiss you. You're not fit for purpose.
Christine Sarteski is a professor of law and criminology and an expert in sovereign citizens.
Because sovereigns truly believe in their ideas, and if they feel very aggrieved by, the government or whomever they think is oppressing them or controlling them, then that they can become emotionally involved. And I think that emotional involvement can sometimes lead to violence in some cases, or the belief that they have the power to, attempt to overthrow a court, a government in some capacity.
It may be hard to square that stark warning with the polite, engaged members of the Sovereign Project. There is no doubt that they hold a deeply radical view, one that is apparently growing in popularity and already causing problems for government. Tom Cheshire, Sky News, Quorn in Leicestershire.
Mike Tyson will return to boxing in the early hours of tomorrow morning, 19 years after his last professional fight. The former heavyweight champion, who is now 58, will face off in Texas against the social media star turned boxer Jake Paul. Sky's Matthew Thompson reports.
There's never been a night this big.
It's been billed as the fight of the century, but for many boxing fans, it's more like the farce of the century.
This is no ordinary fight.
Mike Tyson, one of the greatest boxers in history, will fight social media star Jake Paul. The trouble is, Tyson is 58 years old, 31 years older than his opponent. It's certainly been promoted like a major fight, but to the purists, it's mere entertainment.
It's personal now! It's personal now! He must die!
Tyson scarcely needs an introduction. A two-time world heavyweight champion and one of the most colourful and controversial personalities ever to step in the ring.
Yes, it is time for an updated house tour.
Jake Paul is a very modern kind of superstar, a social media influencer with tens of millions of followers who has reinvented himself as a boxer.
A spectacle for the ages or dangerous and irresponsible? Almost nobody in boxing is neutral about this fight. Asked directly about tarnishing his legacy, Mike Tyson was scathing. Legacy, he said, sounds like ego. But whatever your views on the bout, one thing is for certain. People are going to watch.
At this boxing gym in South London, almost everyone admitted they'll tune in, even if they didn't particularly like it.
So they just figured out how to make money, and they'll make easy money. Both of them will be happy. It's a win-win situation for both of them.
You know, it's Mike Tyson at the end of the day, and Mike Tyson's an animal.
Are you going to watch this thing tonight?
Yeah, because I'm curious. Mike Tyson in his prime would have absolutely killed him within seconds. And Mike Tyson isn't well. Jake Paul's just... He's questionable.
Let's go, Jake Paul. I'll smash your face.
It's also a significant new departure for Netflix, who are taking a swing at live sport.
I absolutely think Netflix have got to answer some questions on this. I think the whole spectacle, the whole fight is offensive to the sport of boxing.
Both men stand to make tens of millions from this fight, and perhaps, in the end, that's the only kind of pound-for-pound boxing that matters. Matthew Thompson, Sky News.
That was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by Chief Executive of Total Politics Group, Mark Wallace, and Daily Mirror columnist, Susie Boniface. Among the stories we will be discussing, this on the front of the eye, the headline, £280 hike to household bills in new blow to cost of living. We'll be right back.
a secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. 5 people have been convicted of murdering 2 teenage best friends in Bristol in a case of mistaken identity. The Chancellor has said she's not satisfied as the economy grew by only 0.1% between July and September. And the partner of TV presenter Davina McCall says she's recovering after what he's described as textbook operation to remove a benign brain tumor. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with Chief Executive of Total Politics Group, Mark Wallace, and the Daily Mirror columnist, Susie Boniface. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. Welcome both. So let's see what is on some of those front pages. Well, the Times leads on a warning from the US, where a senior economic advisor has said the UK should align itself with America and not the EU if it is to get a trade deal. On the front of The Guardian, the staggering cost of the UK's junk food is revealed to be £268 billion a year. That's more than the entire NHS budget. The Eye warns of a £280 hike to household bills and a new blow to cost of living ahead of new inflation figures to be released on Wednesday. The Daily Mail leads with a column from Boris Johnson in which he warns the thought police in Starmer's Britain are like the Soviet Union. There's another Tory attack against the Prime Minister on the front of the Telegraph as Kemi Badenoch challenges Mr Starmer on hate laws. In the Express, Davina McCall's brain tumour surgery is the main story as she asks the public to say a prayer for me. That message is also on the front page of The Mirror. And it's also The Sun's main story, with it claiming to have details on the Star's 6-hour operation to remove the tumour. And finally, the Daily Star reports that Jake Exotic, a.k.a. the Tiger King, is calling on Donald Trump to make him a member of the cabinet as U.S. Wildlife Director. Don't bet against it. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the program, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Mark Wallace and Susie Boniface. Thank you both so much for going through the papers with us. Let's start with the Times front page. And there it is, one of the stories that we mentioned there. Pretty stark there. Dump the socialist EU, that's a Trump aide. It's saying that the UK should align itself with the US on trade rather than pursuing closer ties with what is called a socialist model. What do you make of it, Susie?
Absolutely nothing, because this is not someone who's working in Trump's government as yet. This is someone who's working within the transition team and who has said something which is on the record, and everyone's jumping, oh, what does this mean? What does this mean? Unless and until someone who thinks that is in a position to do something about it, it's sort of irrelevant. It does indicate, you know, how the Trump camp feels about stuff, but it's not exactly surprising in that regard. And the fundamental reason why Boris Johnson's government was not able to land that trade deal with the US when he tried to do that after Brexit was because of the concerns about US agricultural standards, about hormone-fed beef, about chlorine-washed chicken, things like that. And there was no public appetite for that in this country at all. And there weren't favourable terms to have that deal. So that's why it collapsed before, not because of the EU, not because of socialism. It would just collapse because they do awful things to some of their animals. So I think you'd still have those problems in place if you tried to do a new deal now. But the fact is, we do far more of our trade with the EU than we do with the US. It's still worth billions and billions, the US trade, but we do many more billions with the EU, and that is arguably the place where we would get more growth from if we could get it working better in our favour. So I think what Rachel Reeves was saying yesterday, where Keir Starmer appears to be positioning his government, is that they want to make that relationship with the EU better and stronger, just because someone on the other side of the Atlantic would rather sell us some slightly manky old chickens is not a reason to stop doing it.
We have seen the US economy, though, do much, much better than the EU economy over the past few years. Do you think that plays a role, and what do you make of this headline?
It does. I mean, the area where I agree with Susie is this is a flashback to what it was like last time round, right? So you've got this kind of anticipation that Trump's going to be in the White House. Anyone, everyone who's ever kind of floated around Donald Trump at all suddenly pops up as being his ambassador to the world. There's various people in the transition team and so on, which is quite an alien system to us in this country because
we don't have one.
Here, power just changes overnight. Everyone got stuffed in. People, ministers are still doing transition into government right now, months after the election. There's upsides and downsides. But so I, you take some of these things with a pinch of salt. But I do think it does point to a couple of quite important decisions that Britain and Keir Starmer more specifically may have to confront in coming years. The EU itself has just very recently published a huge and extremely concerning report about its structural economic problems, about its serious productivity problems, and you can see already some of the political challenges there are to the prospect of any kind of economic or social reform in some of its major economies, including France, for example, where there's another row happening about even minor changes to public sector working conditions. So there's a general choice there and challenge for the UK. If the US continues roaring ahead and the EU becomes more stymied and we have plenty of productivity problems of our own, there may be a specific challenge for Keir Starmer. Donald Trump is not unknown for his joy of trying to stir the pot and put people in awkward positions. If he does impose these gigantic tariffs that he's threatening on trade with the outside world, and he takes the moment to say, do a deal with me and I'm willing to exempt Britain from those, it's an interesting question for Keir Starmer. Puts him in a bit of a tricky position on some topics. Perhaps not on agri-food, but it might do on things like our outgoing steel industry or car manufacturing, for example.
I mean, there's a lot of question marks about the future Trump administration. If we just look at the FT, the front page there, and reaction to Donald Trump's appointment of his health secretary. So the headline, pharma stocks hit after Trump discloses choice of health chief. Now, the health chief is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is known to be a vaccine skeptic. So perhaps unsurprisingly, the stocks fell. But it goes to show, I mean, you mentioned chlorinated chicken earlier, Susie. I mean, there's a lot of things that could change in the US that could make future trade possibly even harder.
Yeah, exactly. And so what's happened is RFK, who's not just a vaccine skeptic, he is a vaccine refusenic. He is
an activist in many ways.
He's full of spreading misinformation, disinformation, accusing other people of doing so. He tends to...
An enthusiastic eater of roadkill.
Yeah,
he's quite a character.
Repeat lots of very seriously debunked and false links between autism and MMR jabs, for example. And interestingly, a few years ago, just before the pandemic, on a trip to Samoa, said so many things about a measles vaccine that they had a measles outbreak shortly afterwards and 83 people died. So he's not exactly the world's best person to be in charge of health, but that's what's happening. And as a result, the shares in lots of pharma companies have slumped over a couple of days, as you'd expect them to. Now, those are the companies that we're going to need, one presumes, to help us through the next pandemic, which we keep being warned is not that far away. So that's not good news. But interestingly, what Trump is trying to do to get these, because he can impose these people. He can say, I want to have him as my health secretary, but it has to go through Senate, and they have, they have parity in terms of government. They have equal power, and so they have to get approved by the Senate before they can take office. Now, Trump has asked for recess appointments, which means the Senate just doesn't bother. He goes, fine, no, we're not going to even sit. You can just impose whoever you like. But that in turn means that the Democrats and stuff have to kind of support it and all agree to not... It's not really going to happen. So you're still going to have this Capitol Hill bun fight and the analysis and the hearings of who these people are, probably. The new leader of the Senate, John Thune, has said, well, we might do recess appointments, but we're probably... So, I mean, Trump is trying to impose them on people, whether they like it or not. He's probably not going to be able to, and especially with some of his picks who are even madder than RFK, so like Matt Gaetz as his Attorney General, someone who has actually been under investigation by the Justice Department that he is now going to be in charge of, just like the President, incidentally. That kind of thing is going to cause some of the Republicans really to throw up their hands and say, we just can't go this far. And it's going to block some of these appointments. It's going to cause a lot of conflict, I'd have thought, in the first days of the Trump administration.
What does it mean for us, then, in our relationship with the US administration?
I think it means a number of things. Firstly, one of the questions I was asking any Labour politician I could find in the kind of year or so in the run-up to the general election was, how does Keir Starmer, as a new broom as the new Labour Prime Minister, lowercase n, new Labour Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, how does he deal with the Trump White House? And there was quite a lot of, oh, well, you know, gosh, we might have to wait and see. Who knows if that'll happen? Well, now it is. And you can't be a million miles away from Washington, even if it's a Trump Washington, because we are still, and long may it continue, hopefully, we are still in NATO together. We are still close allies. We still need America to be interested in the wider world, which is part of my concern about a Trump administration, is as well as the endarkenment, the undoing, RFK-wise, of being led by science, evidence and rationality, there's also the prospect of this idea that America could simply try and wash its hands of the wider world, not just Ukraine, but beyond. And I think Britain and any British Prime Minister should be working to try and be a counterweight to that in Washington so far as they can. But it's extremely concerning. And of course, we know that while Farage and a few other people are very friendly with the incoming Trump administration, the vast majority of British voters are very anti in every party.
Mm.
OK, well...
Except Reform.
Yeah, and we need to bear in mind as well, of course, their special relationship isn't just about trade or what you do and don't have in common. It's like we rent our nuclear missiles from them, put our warheads on the top. And if you have a collapse in that relationship, the renewal of Trident, our continuously at sea deterrent, various parts of our defence, not just NATO, just kind of collapses.
One thing I would add is, going back to that EU question, is if the troubles and concerns that the pharmaceutical sector will have if RFK is in the United States should be seen by this country as a major opportunity in terms of becoming a go-to home for the biotech. We have a lot of successful biotech businesses and research scientists in this country. We could have a lot more, and using the regulatory flexibility between the EU and the US on our own patch, we could do well out of that. But I would rather have the United States that believes in...
Didn't Rishi just sell the vaccine centre that we built during the pandemic at great expense and then immediately flogged it off to private sector? And now we could do with it again.
Got 2 minutes left. Sorry. Let's look at another story, so closer to home. If you look at the Daily Telegraph, the headline there, Badenoch challenges Starmer on hate laws, and this is the furore around a tweet by a Telegraph writer, Alison Pearson. But let's also bring up the Times, page 4, which is similar. Hate incidents are a waste of police time, admits Reeves. Mark, talk us through the details of the story within reason and just how you see the press coverage of it.
Well, I've got 2 minutes to talk through the details
exactly,
of the story.
there you go.
There are two distinct but related stories here. The first is the experience that Alison Pearson, the very popular Telegraph columnist, reported last Sunday when she answered her door, Remembrance Sunday, in her dressing gown to find that 2 police officers from Essex Police were on her doorstep. She says that they told her they were here to talk to her about a so-called non-crime hate incident relating to a complaint that had been made about something she'd said on social media. And so far as we're aware, they wouldn't tell her what she was alleged to have done. They wouldn't tell her who said she'd done it or what was wrong about it, or indeed what they were going to do next, which is obviously concerning. There's a debate going on. The police are now saying they are actually investigating a possible criminal allegation. It's quite murky what Essex Police thought they were up to. I think you could take some heart that obviously there's no actual other crime taking place in Essex, no burglaries or sexual assaults left to investigate if they can use their time that way. This story that Rachel Reeves is commenting on, that we see in the Times here, goes to recent research, including a huge number of people, including children, being recorded for these non-crime hate incidents. And I'm encouraged to see Rachel Reeves agree this is a waste of time and money and police resources, because so far as I'm concerned, the police should not be dealing with things which can be called non-crime. If it is a crime, the police should be investigating it. Lord knows we have enough crime. Lord knows the police say they don't have enough time. Stop investigating. If you look at something and think, well, that's a non-crime incident, leave it be. Let's get on with our lives.
The definition does seem to imply that the police shouldn't be worrying about it too much. I would say that when you do have someone saying something deeply unpleasant, and it can be, if it's left alone, becomes worse and repeated and gets worse and worse, and does lead to the kind of things where you see, misogynistic remarks becoming reinforced, becoming an attack on women, stuff like that, when it does become crime. And there is an argument for saying we need to try and catch these things earlier before they get to that point, which was the aim of that legislation. It's not a bad aim. It's a bit Minority Report, but it's not a bad aim. This is clearly not it, and it needs to not be targeted, I would have thought, on 9-year-olds who say appalling things to each other. I've got to say, they're just awful.
We're going to have to leave it there for now. Coming up, we'll be discussing how the first ever research on it has revealed the UK's growing addiction to unhealthy food, which costs the country £268 billion a year.
Migrants risk their lives climbing aboard these trains in search of a dream, the United States.
It's really dangerous. They often get robbed on this train.
They suffer a lot by police, cartels.
What happens to them next, we just don't know. Do you miss your mum?
With Trump coming to the presidency, how much longer will people be accommodated?
The journey you've been through, it's been very difficult at times. Has it been worth it?
See. This is a journey which goes by one name, the Beast.
First Minister, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Nice to see you.
How are you feeling? Looking forward to getting into the parliamentary chamber.
Are you any further forward to making a decision?
No, it's an important day today.
All of the claims were in line with my parliamentary duties, so I'm making that clear to you, Conor.
He was a Scot through and through.
He was a very good politician.
Alex Salmond was controversial, he was a disruptor, but above all, he was respected.
Will you resign if you lose this week?
Again, I'm not planning to, of course, lose the vote of no confidence. I'm planning to win that vote of no confidence.
His face said it all.
My intention to stand down as party leader.
This is now a storm with deadly consequences. How are they feeling?
They're a bit scared at the minute.
We've been told to evacuate.
How are you feeling?
Devastated.
Hundreds of homes were wiped out by flooding. I'm Conor Gillis, Sky's Scotland correspondent.
It was probably the darkest time in my life.
Scott is 5 years sober after a cocaine addiction left him close to death.
Scotland has a shameful record. Worse than England, the worst in Europe. Why not just say you failed? Because then you might get more respect from families who've lost loved ones.
This is where one of the UK's most prolific rapists thought he'd got away with murder.
Sky News can reveal that former sex workers had told police he was sexually violent.
My Emma.
Free wherever you get your news.
It's over, isn't it?
The Americans say he is Rossi, a fraudster.
This has been one of the most bizarre cases ever heard in a courtroom in this country.
A dangerous murderer.
Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive Andrew Ennis after this?
She said she can forgive him, but as long as he's behind bars.
By doing the right thing, it's destroyed your life.
They terrorised me. They intimidated me.
Sky News. The full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. Mark Wallace and Susie Boniface are still with me. Let's go straight to the front page of The Guardian. What a shocking headline, I thought, anyway. Addiction to junk food costs the UK £268 billion a year. I was shocked, then I asked you two about it earlier, and you made me less shocked. Susie, tell us why.
The trick is always to read the third column, because that's where the caveats usually are. And in this case, the figure has been, if it looks massive, it's because it is. The figures have kind of been arrived at by adding up what the researchers have decided are diet-related costs. So social care, welfare system, the NHS. So it's just basically counting diseases believed to be linked to diet, such as diabetes, heart problems, kidney disease. You can get all those things.
And lack of productivity
through
as well.
something other than diet. You can get it because you're born that way, because you have a genetic issue, because you've become ill later on, and it is not necessarily all related to diet whatsoever. And added to which, of course, even if you, so let's say you saved on some heart doctors because fewer people had heart problems, well, you think you'll find that heart doctors still do other stuff helping other people. So you haven't completely, got rid of the need for all those staff. It's what I would call completely bogus number. And it's not based on anything.
But I guess
really
it's the
solid.
first research of its kind that does look at all sorts of aspects.
Well, I'm not sure it is the first research of its kind. I mean, Chris Snowdon, who does a lot of research into this, points out that recent reports estimating this cost in 2017, 27 billion, in 2021, 98 billion, now it's 268 billion. I mean, inflation's a thing, but this is a little bit out of hand. What I actually take issue is the overuse of the word addiction. What they're describing here is not addiction. What they're describing is people eating too much and not moving enough. And that is there's a different thing. This is not medicalising this takes away the element to which this is a matter of personal choice. If people are making the wrong choices, it's not like it's a mystery to people that if I'm carrying a bit too much timber, it's because I eat too much and I don't move enough. That's my responsibility and my choice.
The addiction angle is that, especially with some of the highly processed stuff, which they're pointing at here, which is that it's laced with salt and sugars to make you want to have more of it and to have cheap, quick highs.
People like to eat it, but that's not the same as an addiction. It is a kind of cheap, over-exaggerated headline, which drives public policy in a particular direction. If it's an addiction, of course you're going to have to ban people rather than talk to them about their choices.
No, but you could also perhaps change the way that some of the ultra-processed food is made.
I mean, you could, but there's also other food that's made in other preferable ways. But it's, we're actually going to forbid people from making it a particular way.
Yeah, and what do you call junk food? Because, I mean, if they start taking Jaffa cakes into that category, I'm going to actually take to the streets.
She's going to kick
because
off.
there's no way that is a junk food. It's 8% orange juice. It's one of your 5 a day.
I've heard that your Jaffa cake habit is costing about 254 billion of these pounds, so it's probably fun.
Well, interestingly, Donald Trump's pick for health secretary, one of the things he wants to do, perhaps, one of the saner things he wants to do, is to have a look at ultra-processed food in the States, because they have an obesity crisis there as well. Like
they don't have Jaffa cakes over there.
But they don't.
Exactly
well,
right.
it's a failing.
It's RFK, who we were just talking about earlier, who has all these kind of somewhat peculiar anti-scientific ideas about medicines, who's also on that whole agenda. These things are the same thing, they're not different.
Let's go to another person who would like to be a pick for Donald Trump's cabinet, the Star, the Daily Star front page. There it is, the Tiger King. Now, he has, I don't know why he keeps on calling it big orange man baby. That's kind of what the Star does. But he wants to be in the cabinet. Susie.
Yes, and it's interesting because he's actually still in jail for trying to murder Carol Baskin in The Tiger King. If anyone watched Netflix, if you haven't, you go have to go and watch it now.
Carol Baskin.
He's writing to Trump from jail saying, please could I be in your cabinet as Director of Wildlife and Fisheries, because that's what obviously his specialty is. And interestingly, Trump was supposed to pardon him last time he was in office, but actually left him lingering in jail up to 10 seconds.
Yes, there was a great campaign. I was keeping my fingers crossed that Trump was going to pardon him at the end. I mean, 3 things he wants. He wants to be out of prison, he wants to be in the cabinet, and he wants Carol Baskin to get some comeuppance.
Thank you both, Mark, Susie. Thank you. Coming up next on Sky News at 11.